Hi everyone, I am back with another video. This is part two of me analyzing the husband's chart in, there was the lottery win for a husband and wife, and I did part one already of the wife's chart, and now this is part two of the husband's chart. So of course, jumping into it, I'll start off with highlighting the static potential in the birth chart that I see that relates to the lottery win and wealth in general. And before I dive right in, I just wanted to say that if you are interested in a personal reading with me, you can book that on my website. We do Zoom sessions, and you can otherwise order a yearly email reading that is done by me. And so that is one of the options you can do. So this is, again, the husband's chart. And right off, I just want to mention that in this chart, as you can see, that all the planets are on one side of the chart. And this is called a Kalasarpa Yoga in Vedic Astrology. And so this usually intensifies all other yogas in a birth chart and makes a life of extremes, ups and downs. And, that's definitely worth noting here. As a lottery win can be life-changing, and it could, they could have had lows, and then this is a high. So let's see. There's a few things here that, again, scream wealth or a lottery win. And again, I'm just going to kind of bounce around. But the first thing is that we have Jupiter, a benefic, in the second house here. And Jupiter here, being the ninth lord in the second house, is forming a wealth-giving Dana yoga. So that's great potential there. And then obviously we see all the stellium of planets in the 10th house. Now, 10th house is considered an Artha house, a wealth-giving Artha house, but, that's not necessarily, screaming wealth or lottery. But here, what you notice is Sun is exalted. And when a planet is exalted, it is the highest strength it could be. And so in this case, Sun is exalted. And this is great because Sun happens to be the second lord of wealth and income and money. And it happens to be exalted. So that's another great factor here. Now, Venus is right there, conjunct Sun. And Venus happens to be the 11th lord of large gains. And here we see that it's sitting with Sun, the second lord. So this is one of the best wealth-giving Dana yogas. You've probably heard me mention this in some of the other videos. So if anyone has this in their chart, this is one of the best indicators to see if you're going to be wealthy, okay? Now, alongside that, we see Moon is there, and Moon happens to be the first lord. And so Moon here is, the person's identity, path in life, and it's essentially their being. So here we see that Moon is conjunct the second lord. That's another wealth-giving Dana yoga. And Moon is conjunct Venus, which is the 11th lord. And so that's another wealth-giving Dana yoga forming here. And on top of that, we see that Moon is with conjunct Mars, and Mars is the fifth lord of lotteries and speculation, gambling. And so that forms also another wealth-giving Dana yoga and Raja, status-giving Raja yoga. Okay, so obviously when you have a lot of planets in one house, there's a lot of yogas that form, and yogas are essentially just planetary combinations. And so the other thing that I want to mention is obviously that Rahu then is in the 9th house, and along with Saturn, and they're right on close degree, 24 degrees of Pisces, and they're both sitting in the nakshatra called Revati, which is the last nakshatra, and it has to do with, it's known as the wealthy star, the constellation. And so this can definitely be a contributing factor as to the, massive wealth or the lottery in this case. And here, Rahu tends to magnify planets it's with, and here it's placed in the 9th house of luck and fortune, and Saturn is the 8th lord of lotteries. And so Rahu here is essentially magnifying the 8th lord of lotteries. Okay. And again, it's placed in the house of luck and fortune. So I think those are the factors that definitely contributed to the win. And Saturn here is actually forming a status-giving Raja Yoga by being the 7th lord in the 9th house. And I'm just looking over to make sure there's nothing else I wanted to say. Well, so that's it for the rising chart. Now, as you know, I always look at the moon chart. And here it is. And here we see that the biggest thing that, again, starting off with Jupiter. Jupiter is placed in the 5th house of lottery games, speculation, gambling. And so it's the 9th lord in the 5th house, again, creating a wealth-giving Dana Yoga and status-giving Raja Yoga. And Rahu here is in the 12th house, which doesn't, again, typically equate to money or lottery or anything like that. But we see Rahu is conjunct Saturn, and in this case, Saturn is the 11th lord, and that has to do with large gains. So here, essentially, Rahu is magnifying the 11th lord of large gains. Okay, and again, it's a very it's 24 degrees, so that it's right on there. And so the tighter the orb, then the stronger the intensity of the planets. And of course, going into this first house now with all the planets there, you see that essentially this is, his first house. And you see Venus is there, 2nd lord, okay, money again, 2nd lord of wealth and income, money in the 1st house, another Dana Yoga. Sun now here is exalted as the 5th lord of speculation, gambling. And so that's exalted here. It's conjunct Venus, the 2nd lord, another wealth-giving Dana Yoga. And then I forgot to mention in the first rising chart, but it applies here and there, is that Mars is in Aries in its own sign. So Sun is exalted and Mars is in its own sign. So Mars is strong here. Now, in this case, in the moon chart, Mercury happens to also gain directional strength here because it's in the 1st house. Okay, so that's another little positive thing. But the main thing that I wanted to mention here about this Mars is that because it's in its own sign, well placed, it gets strengthened. And guess what Mars is in his case? It is the 8th lord. Okay, so it's the 8th lord of lotteries in the 1st house. And again, this is one of the best indicators of winning the lottery is having this combination, okay? The 8th lord in the 1st house. So that is what I wanted to mention on the moon chart. Now, I did look at the D9 and the D11. So I guess I will go over that now. And I don't have it on the screen here, so just kind of try to follow along in your head. But basically, I'm just going to pull it up right here. So the thing I wanted to mention about the D9 is that, D9 is supposed to kick in the second part of life more so. Either way, it's a good chart to analyze when we're looking at any type of event. But what I wanted to mention about the D9 is that this, he had Rahu and Saturn in the 5th house of again, the lottery games and speculation, and then Sun and K2 in the 11th house. So this, you have these 4 planets on the 5-11 axis, which have to do with usually, wealth in life. And they're all sitting within a tight degree orb, closely conjunct each other. And so again, Rahu and Saturn are in Aquarius, and so Saturn is well placed in its own sign. It's conjunct Rahu. So I feel like this was definitely indicative of the lottery. Now, Sun is well placed in Leo in its own sign alongside K2, and K2 can magnify a planet, and so in this case, this was Sun and K2 were in the 11th house, okay, of his D9. So you can see that these 2 planets are well placed in their own sign, and Rahu and K2 are there activating this 5-11 axis even further. And then I'll just say that in his D9, the moon is in Scorpio, so it's debilitated in the 2nd house. And I just find that interesting because it doesn't seem to get cancellation of the debilitation. So it's just technically a debilitated moon in the 2nd house, which you would think that it would not produce any results, financially. But I've mentioned this before, but having a debilitated planet doesn't have to be all bad. So it's just something worth mentioning. So, and then moving on to the D11, I wanted to just mention that what stuck out is that in the 8th house, he has Jupiter in Sagittarius. Again, Jupiter's well placed in the 8th house of lottery wins. It's an expansive planet, lucky planet. So you could see in the D11, which has to do with large gains, Jupiter is well placed there. And that's the main thing I kind of wanted to say about that. And otherwise, you could get lost in the weeds, and you can just, there's always a lot to consider when analyzing the charts, but that's kind of the main thing I wanted to say. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the transits. Lastly, on the day of the win, where the planets were and what they were doing in accordance to his birth chart. So like I said, the win took place. And by the way, I think I forgot to mention in this video, but the couple, the husband and wife, they had $120 million. And this happened in March 1997. Okay. And you can try to follow along here. I'm going to move the chart back to the main chart in Cancer. And so just try to follow along that. The nodes, okay? So during the time of the win, Rahu and Ketu were in Pisces and Virgo, and he was having a nodal inversion. So Ketu was crossing his 9th house, okay? Nodal was crossing over natal Rahu, and transiting Rahu was transiting in Virgo over natal K2. Okay, so he was having a nodal inversion, and usually anytime the nodes come back to its original place or in an inversion, it's, it could be a pivotal time in someone's life where things kind of happen unexpectedly. Sometimes there's confusion, but, big pivotal events can occur. Now, remember what I said at the very beginning, this person has a Kalasarpa yoga, which makes all the other yogas and transits probably a lot, stronger. And so any wealth-giving Dana yogas that are present would be magnified. And then the other big transit that was happening during the time of the win is that he was going through a Saturn return. Saturn was transiting in Pisces. And so this was, again, a Saturn return. And sometimes, see, I've mentioned this also in my other videos, where nodal inversions or Saturn return, or like some of these harsher transits that are typically harsher, they're not all bad. Sometimes I've noticed that they can bring in big responsibilities or these big windfalls, okay? Not always. Sometimes it does bring hardships, but in this case, clearly he was going through a nodal inversion and a Saturn return, which typically would be kind of a harsh transit, but in this case, it clearly was to his benefit. Now, the biggest factor that alluded to the win, okay, in terms of transits was that, again, Rahu was aspecting, okay, from Virgo, it was aspecting the 11th house of large gains, and Jupiter was transiting his 7th house of Capricorn, okay? And again, Jupiter here was trining, so aspecting the 11th house, okay? So that's the key thing to take away, is that transiting Rahu, transiting Jupiter were both aspecting the 11th house of large gains. And at the time of the win, Venus was transiting Aquarius, okay? And this is really cool because Venus has to do with opulence, wealth, money, and it was literally transiting the 8th house of lotteries. And from his moon, it would be the 11th house, okay? So Venus was transiting 8th house and 11th house from the moon. Moon is the fastest moving planet, and so Moon that day happened to be exalted in Taurus, and it was transiting his 11th house from his main chart here, and it was the 2nd house from the moon. So again, activating money, okay? It was exalted, strong, and Taurus in the 11th house and 2nd house from the moon. So this was definitely triggering wealth and the gains, and Venus was, triggering the 8th house. So I mean, that's those are the main things that are jumping out at me. Let's see. Yeah. So again, hope this was useful. Hope you appreciate it. I love, doing the research on this type of stuff, especially when it comes to lottery gains. I plan to do a few more in the future. So if you do appreciate this video, please, comment. Let me know if you have any similar placements in your chart, if you, your favorite takeaway from the video. And like I said, try to engage with the content. It helps me out with the silly algorithm. And hopefully I can do more videos, and let me know if there's anything else that you want videos on. I'll try to take some suggestions. And again, if you want to book a personal reading with me, you can do so on my website, aggieology.com. And I'll talk to you in my next video. I did forget to mention one more important thing, which is analyzing the dashas during the win. And so quickly, I just wanted to mention that during the win, this person was in the dasha of Rahu Jupiter. And this is very evident when it comes to the win because, again, Rahu, it happens to be in the 9th house of luck and fortune, but we can see here that Rahu is conjunct the 8th lord, okay, Saturn 8th lord, and Rahu is also conjunct Saturn, the 11th lord from the moon. So I believe that was, contributing factor to the win as to why he won during Rahu Subdasha, in the Mahadasha. And if we always look to Rahu's dispositor, which in this case happens to be Jupiter, and Jupiter here again is in the 2nd house of income, money, wealth, and from the moon, Jupiter is in the 5th house of lottery games, gambling, speculation. And again, he was in the subdasha of Jupiter. So again, what I just said about Rahu being disposited by Jupiter, this also applies more so because Jupiter is placed in the 5th house from the moon and in the 2nd house from the rising chart. Now, this would activate the Dana Yoga that Jupiter is creating here, the 9th lord in the 2nd house, and the wealth-giving Dana Yoga and status-giving Raja Yoga from the moon, 9th lord in the 5th house. So we can see here as to why he won during Rahu Jupiter, okay? So that's all I wanted to mention, but I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. And Rahu, like I said at the beginning of the video, is Rahu and Saturn are both in Revati Nakshatra, And so that is a wealth giving nakshatra. And again, key thing is that Rahu here is with Saturn 11th Lord and Saturn the 8th Lord. Okay, so that's all I wanted to add.